presidential palace. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania. This is the tapestry that was in the room with the Deputy Prime Minister that we just had. So this area is the Jewish hospital from the 1800s, and it became the Jewish ghetto
was for what?
in Vilnius.
I don't know, institution was in the ghetto territory, as it was designated.
So this is the Jewish synagogue. We're going in.
Problem with Minyan now, and they aren't paying those who are coming to Minyan, officially registered. That problem existed all those 30 or 14 years, maybe more.
So it's an active synagogue?
It existing synagogue.
Oh.
Now, okay, it's acting. They have regular breakfast.
Good? Yeah. Okay, let me
To our lodge.
let me show you something here.
We are now in the Ponary forests where Nazis used unfinished fuel depots to hold mass exterminations of the 70,000 Vilnius area Jews.
The Russians started to build here those
Fuel.
fuel.
You know, they were ravines, but they were fuel storage.
This is the monument built in 1985 to the Ponary murders, hundreds of thousands. So this is a monument to the citizens that were killed here. In Yiddish says 70,000 Yidden in Yiddish.
Nazis were quite organized people. They didn't take
From 1941 to 1944.
from house.
This is the monument erected in 2004 in memory of the 86 soldiers of the Lithuanian Territorial Defense Force in February of 1944 with the permission of the Nazi Germany, SS and police headquarters. So this used to be called the Jewish Museum, now it's the Ponary Museum, and there are no artifacts inside. So this is the Vilna Gaon State Jewish Museum Memorial.
And of course, all of them recognize participation of Lithuanians in that. From 91 until...
Let's go here and see if we can get a photo. I want to see the back.
Absolutely no
of all the Jews.
tries in Lithuania. That is the original pit. It looks like this. It says here Hitler occupants burned corpses taken from that pit. That is. It's absolutely typical inscription of majority of pits. Nothing about who were those corpses, why they were here, just those occupants, even if they were murdered. Just occupants found those corpses.
So the Soviets failed to say that these were Jews who were murdered in this pit.
Soviet system. Now,
The pit where the Jews were lined up, shot, and killed. And then they had an area nearby where they burned all the bodies. The Soviet plaque that was built in 19 85 just said people were burned, or the bodies were burned, but they didn't say how they were murdered and that they were Jews. This Jewish store's painted sign was discovered under Soviet painting over it.
Called Mignon. But after the war, only this part survived. Neighborhood. When Dan saw it, it was already empty and.
So this was a chocolate factory.
Those, I don't know how those people they were built almost in the same time. This was opened in 1501, behind it in 1498. But there are three different architectural styles here. The St. Anne Church is built in so-called late Gothic style. St. Bernardine Church in Gothic, and even parts of it is in Renaissance, pretty Gothic.
So a lot of this wood was preserved by the Soviets, but it was preserved in storage. Building was the headquarters of the Jewish mafia, mostly Polish. And it's here in Lithuania.
One of the most important buildings, yes, in history
who was taken
of
from the
Holocaust.
Jewish ghetto
At the
and killed
31st of December
in
1941, here in public, we got the state monastery.
Jewish cemetery.
I see. And this is during Soviet times then.
Now, those pictures, except one, were found.
A mystery of the Magan David. This is the library in the Jewish ghetto.
Medical library.
And these are old photos that someone found in the Jewish ghetto, and they blew them up and put them on this building.
We need a laser.
So right now, this old building. We're now in the typical Jewish ghetto area. That's our guide.
It's Ber Shershnievsky. During the
This-
war, during the ghetto time. As
And this is
for
this
staff,
area right here.
in reality, most probably it's reparation after liberation. So it's most probably 44. It's
The banister, as in the photo, just the way it appeared during World War, or during the Jewish ghetto time. Outside of this ghetto was the Vilna uprising, where they fought against the Nazis by putting machine guns on the balconies, and as the Nazis came in, they would shoot at them.
What kind
This
of
is the old
geschäft?
colonial.
Yiddish
It's spices,
inscription.
coffee,
Spices?
spices, coffee.
Oh, I see.
What kind?
Imported products from overseas. From the colony.
This
But
building is
it's
from
kind of
1892.
typical names. There were
part of the
seven
Jewish
such
ghetto.
shops on the
It
street.
used to be a Jewish neighborhood
and
before the
seven
war, and then
such-
became a ghetto.
But anyway, here you see only Yiddish inscription. Polish, it says gas in oil, basically in
Kerosene.
Polish,
Kerosene.
Kerosene.
and kerosene in Yiddish.
Kerosene.
Naphtha, it's not a kerosene.
That's kerosene. Yeah, kerosene. See it.
So now it's
Prima could be absolutely everything.
Vilnius
First class.
Ministry.
So it's why I said
something.
another organization, bigger but not so tight. with different strategy. Strategy of it all was fight inside the ghetto, the uprising when the last day is coming or something like that. And the idea was that they will destroy walls. Right here was one of those wooden walls, and some population maybe could. The 1st of September, ghetto was surrounded by Nazi forces.
In the middle, the purplish one.
But see, they
That was
need
the
that.
headquarters of the Judenrat.
35 organizations participated in his
He was part of the
funeral,
Jewish
which
community.
he
Yeah, he was a
organized
famous
in Vilnius, and,
Jewish doctor in the ghetto.
Was a ghetto.
Do you remember Sonia Shabbat? Okay, so Sonia.
Here we are in the Jewish ghetto of Vilnius. So here's how to spell mincha in Chinese. This is the Vilnius gown.
Inside it's old piece, but in transit, made in 54. I was friendly with people who did it, and they told them.
The building was built in the 16th century, and it was Jewish community. Now this building is the Romanian embassy, but it was a synagogue from the 16th century until 1941.
But entrances.
So this was the entrance to the ghetto before it was closed in.
They didn't want Jews to mix, so when you get to go to this ghetto, and in the beginning, the only part on which they could use was Mikra, the big synagogue. They get to go all around. Not just go this way, but go all around.
So this whole exhibit is about Litvak Jewish artists who left and went to Paris to do their art.
All they gave artworks for free. Fontenay-sous-Bois City Hall and Pompidou Center, and as well some private collections, and some pieces are from Lithuanian collections and from our museum as well.
So I'm particularly
And
interested.
he was the first who came to Paris. And there he had his studio, where a lot of famous people came, and for example, Auguste Rodin and other elite of Paris were visiting. And his problems in America is very boring, no pictures on them, and blah blah blah. And he saw this portrait of Lincoln, and he said, let's do it. Let's put it on one coin, on one penny. So now we could say it's the most known artwork. And
What was his name again?
Victor Brenner, you could take here.
Ah.
And what was so interesting, at the beginning on these first coins, he put his initial.
Arbit Blatas.
Yes.
I met Arbit Blatas. He was married to a famous
Yes,
opera singer,
Regina.
Regina Resnick.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Alfred Boucher, he bought 8 years old, and about 18, 20 years old. If you look to the Spanish cards, it's like colors of the shtetl, and now the weather is good, but and children, if you look to the children, they are so sad.
She was from Ghettos.
Yes, with the dog, but she's so sad. Yes?
It's very interesting. Let's say.
Or melancholic. So
Marc Chagall.
and that evening, he 10 years before the book was published, he wrote first illustrations to this book as well.
Fantastic.
And what is interesting about art in the studios, and we have bloggers, the woman.
This is our Grand Hotel Kempinski here in Vilnius. Really nice hotel, luxurious, excellent breakfast, buffet.
And rich and interesting history of our city, which is actually 700 years young city. Because this year is a special year that Vilnius celebrates the 700 years since its anniversary on 1323. We are now in a place, in a location where the history of Vilnius as the city begins. But initially it was not a city. It was a Vilna defensive fortress that stood right here in this place, and that was actually surrounded, now it's a street right behind your back, by the tiny river Vilna that gave the name to this place. This place was known the Vilna Defensive Fortress. An actual city, well, it was not a city, the fortress site was this location with the river, and behind the river there were several houses across. Vilna was established by the Grand Vilnius, the founding father of nowadays could be of course known as the absolutely racist document called the Non-Judea Tolerandis, which means no tolerance for Jews in translation, rough translation, which exactly strictens the limitations of the area of settlement for them, and also what they can do, where they can live.
Moses with the
This
rays of
place
light
was of
coming
course
out.
artificially now hired. It was lower than that, but there is still visible some perfume store and many others.
Well, the Jewish
Let me
village
ask you a question.
Yes.
or
So
on
the
the
flooding
street,
was there and the flooding was here. I see
and the
that
street was flooded,
Vilnius
and the Jews were the ones
it
who
has an
came up with a
incline
sewer
a little
system
bit
to
down.
prevent the
Was it always
floods.
like that? Because that would mean then that the
Major
water...
VIP residence. And from 1310 till 1595, Lithuania, Poland, or Polin, Republic of Belarus nowadays, and the parts of Ukraine were one great country, the Great Grand Duchy of Lithuania. But the most fun fact is that it turns to be radioactive. And we joke that it's a Trojan horse because the Swedes once occupied Vilnius. Damage we have to sit here for I don't
So
know
we're
a year or
standing
so.
at the gates
But when there's craziness of Pokemon, those
Where the
that were
palace,
sitting trying
the
to catch the
Grand Duke's
Pokemons, they
palace.
hunted some.
So this used to be the Grand Duke's palace, where the gates, and now it's an art museum or history museum. This was the Dutch headquarters from the 16th century for the business. This is the courtyard of the presidential palace, which was developed by
we'll see.
Napoleon. This was
I
going
have
to be
this
his
live information
home
upcoming.
once he
It's
conquered
on
Russia.
development. Now
He
it's everything
failed, so
on
he
development.
left. And in 1993, this became the presidential palace, the White House, but it was really only the office.
So those 30,000 from the Shnipka district and others, they imprisoned here. And suddenly in the houses where 10 people or 7 people used to live, 25, 30, 50 appeared. And that also
This is
turned
the
into
Jewish
disaster.
community, the
This house should be
small
renovated.
Jewish
It's
community, and the
16,
large
50 years
Jewish
old, and it
community.
was
Blowers.
rabbis stated that there were actually 2 Gaonims in Vilna. One was Torah and religion, it's Gaon Vilna. Another one of art, it was Mark or Morton.
This was the ghetto
interior
theater,
is, the same?
No. Of course,
and
interior
it was
is
destroyed
changed.
by the Nazis in 1942 and 1943.
But this is the kids' theater. This is. Come over here.
So this is the Jewish theater. It's now
Well, the careers
a regular theater, but it was
Jewish trade.
destroyed or shut down by the Nazis. This building across the street is the authentic labor camp where the Jews were told they'd be paid to work here during the Nazis. They came to work and they were killed anyway after they were not paid. And this is that building that was a labor camp.
the great Jewish theater,
1901.
the most
This is the
famous
great
Jewish
Jewish
theater
theater.
in all Europe. Young Vilnius. This whole building. This whole building
Really?
is
So there was the
Junge
Jewish
Vilnius.
theater, and now
Yes, it
it's
was the most
Astoria
famous
Hotel.
Jewish theater in all Europe.
and George
They
Bush
made the
stayed here
spectacle,
during
the
NATO
book, The Devil,
in
that is still
1990.
going on around the world.
Well, he said 93. So this building used to be
1896.
Jewish-owned. There was a pharmacist.
Here was a
And
pharmacy, White
In
Swan. Here.
Cyrillic, he put his name Chaim Lutzman.
What was his last name?
Chaim Eliezer Botzman.
Oh,
Boltzmann.
Chaim
But
Eliezer
there's the letter
Boltzmann.
J.
XB.
That's a B or V?
B.
Oh, yeah,
And
now I
that's,
can see it.
When, in
That's a B, yeah, yeah.
1886, he made this house. Of course, during the Soviet
Well, you can try
era,
it.
and then the
Facebook
Nazis
one, but
was
it's
taken
really
over.
in Cyrillic, so it's
Yeah, yeah.
dedicated to the merchant, very famous merchant, Leiba Meyerovich, or it was Meyerson, because in Russian Empire, the family's surnames were Russified. Meyerson became Meyerovich, each added to the surname. Feigelson. It was the house of Vilnius Jewish charity, community, Talmud Torah, and the cheap residual area, and the community Mishmeres Cholim.
This is the Takai Castle, and the Karaite Jews came here in the 15th century. And this is the lake on which the Takai Castle fortress was built. We're walking across the bridge to the castle. This is the flag over the castle. That's the Ukrainian flag. Just showing support because we're here in Lithuania.
600 years ago, it's end of 14th, beginning to 15th centuries, and it was a time when Lithuania was attacked by Teutonic Knights, or Crusaders, or German Knights mostly, because Lithuania was not a Christian, and was attacked many years in order to help converting pagan Lithuanian state to Christianity. So the castle was built as fortress in the beginning, but later became the residence of Grand Dukes. And Grand Duke Vytautas, difficult names of Lithuanian version, was made in our castle. Oh wow, 10 years ago.
Queen Elizabeth I movie was filmed here.
Tunnels or pipes inside of walls, and the rooms on the first floor used to be heated with hot air. It's like a Roman heating system, known in several castles of medieval ages in the Europe as well. But not in every one castle, so our duke was modern enough. Nowadays, after restoration, the museum is opened all year round, but closed in winter time, so needs to for different purposes. The chapel was arranged on the last floor for family. Gatekeepers posted in the tower, and the mechanism for the controlling the drawbridge was arranged.
Grand Duke and Duchess Vitolia. Tapestry is the Battle of Grunwald, which means green wood. The Lithuanian army defeated the Teutonics in the 1450s. This is the Grand Duke Vytautas.
In 1387, end of 14th century, Tiškevičius, known in the history of Lithuania, later in the history of Poland as well. And this is a map, very small letters, Latin language, difficult to see. But the Grand Duchy of Lithuania in the Middle Ages was very big, from the Baltic to the Black Sea. So nowadays Ukraine, Belarus, and part of Russia, Smolensk district, it was one state, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. It was in fashion to decorate the household items with real money in 18th century, and that plate is from 18th
It
century.
looks like a Seder plate, but it's decorated with coins.
You see porcelain from Byzantine, partly, not fully. Later, the castle was wasted by the time.
of religion became the name of new ethnicity. And that religion, Karaism, appeared in 8th century in old Mesopotamia, today territory of Iraq. But little by little, missionaries of Karaism reached the shores of Black Sea, Crimea, and many tribes were converted into Karaism. But Karaism is like a branch of Judaism, or old Judaism, because the religion is based on Old Testament, Torah, but without Talmud, without of any addition and commentaries. They appeared in Jewish religion later. So girls dress traditional costumes of Karaites.
This is a woman. The subject is a Karaite in this particular
Karaite or Karaites, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find in the historical sources named as Karaites, but sometimes Karaites.
We say, yeah, in Hebrew.
So this is the official flag from the 14th century of Lithuania. So these are the private
I would
apartments
like
for
to
the
show
Duke
you
and
chess
Duchess.
pieces, possibly our Duke himself played with them. Chess games were popular
Wow.
and known in that time. They are made in 15th century, and possibly our Duke himself played with them. Several rings were found in here and money. Before, the coins in Lithuania were used such oblong silver sticks as money.
Oh, I see. These were silver sticks.
Yeah.
So they had to weigh a certain amount.
Yeah. And coins, not Lithuanian coins, Prague groats. In that time, Czech groats were used as euro today, as common currency. But this one chainmail was made in the 17th century, weighed about 5 kilograms. But very expensive. Yes, it image.
Now we're going out through the drawbridge. We're going to the Jewish Museum. This is the largest synagogue in all of Europe, and it's now a big skyscraper. So this is the Jewish library built in 1936, before the war, and this is one of the few buildings that survived.
General was entrusted.
So this was the Jewish library. Now it has the archives from World War II. So as we came into the library, this was the evidence from the fire when the Nazis burned down the synagogue. And this had fire damage, but because it was built in 1936, it was modern enough that the building was not destroyed.
The quotation of the testament of the last will of teenager, 19 years old student, whose task and ambition was to hide the archives in the place. I will tell you more about it. To report to Germans, so they had to. So definitely they don't know each other, all of them. They knew some of them, parts of them. So let's have a look on some names. Schumann Huberband. He had anybody who wrote about him wrote in the best of information. What was his profession? What was his education? What he did for the archives. Also, you have to sample.
These were the milk containers where the archives were hidden in the Warsaw Ghetto to preserve them.
You want to see it, the most known Emmanuel Lincoln along with his famous picture.
These are the printed versions of all the archives that were found and discovered after the liquidation and destruction of the ghetto. The group Oneg Shabbat knew that people were being killed and they wanted to save all the proof and evidence so that the Nazis and people involved would be found and punished.
The museum, and you'll see the exhibition. You can see the map of the camp, which I consider it's important to see as a first thing, just to kind of realize where we are and what is happening right here. So parking lot is right here. This is exactly where we are at the museum. Then further on, we'll take a walk all the way to see the monument. Right now, of course, but a place where the so-called Treblinka 2 extermination camp used to be. Then Treblinka 1 is on the other side, which was this labor camp, which was 2 kilometers away from each other, so 1.2 miles away, with the gravel pit, as you can see right here, and execution site at the end where people were murdered. Yes? So this is the whole complex. You can see right here, of course, they are train tracks. They were going along the road that we took, and there was the side train track done for just the Treblinka 2 extermination camp.
So this room is set up to be like a gas chamber, and these are headstones that they found. We're in Treblinka. This is a ground depression in Treblinka near the extermination camp in Treblinka 2. The bodies were thrown in to Treblinka 2, which was the death camp.
Which were here, so
Well, hopefully they'll go home and bring thousands more back.
Is the entry
new museum
to
which will be done sooner or
death
later because we are planning to make a museum. You can see
these stones mark off
original,
the borders of the
train
camp.
tracks, which represents the side platform.
This is Treblinka. This represents the train tracks going with the cattle cars to drop off the passengers at the platform to be killed. This is the map where I'm standing inside the extermination camps of Treblinka.
Cemetery, so you'll see, and there are 17,000 monument is, and of course on the way we'll take this path like left of us, which is supposed to symbolize this Schlauch, yes, so the way to heaven. It was done in a totally different way. It doesn't resemble the original layout of the camp, but that's why I consider it to tell you a little bit more about it, because it varies from the original camp. Of course, this one was this living area. This was the Camp 1. Camp 2, the reception area, and the Lazaret, yes, in which the incapable people, all their single children were murdered. And then the gas chambers number 2, the gas chambers number 1, the first ones, of course, right here, which was not efficient enough, so this had 10 chambers, this had 3, so 13 altogether. Right here at the beginning, the bodies were buried right here in this mass graves, but then in this winter of 1943, those corpses were burned on a piles of bodies in the long run. But this is how it looks like. Also, this 19 was this barrack, you maybe remember, with this clock and the Obermaiden, yes, sign. So it was right on the platform because this was a storage for these goods which were sorted right here in this area. So when they were sorted, they were put in these barracks waiting to be transferred to the Nazi Germany. Oh, this is new. The black road on the side was done by the prisoners all the way. This was done later.
All these monuments were representing the different countries, Macedonia, Greece, that were killed here. And then further are the individual towns, but also 1, 2, who saved all the orphans. Then Greece, and then Austria, and the MC, Bulgaria, Polska, Czechoslovakia. So these are the different communities. 17,000 communities are represented by these stones, and only one to that Samuel Korczak, who saved the orphans. dedicated to Janusz Korczak, who was taking care of orphans in the ghetto, Warsaw Ghetto. And when they were called, he went with the children to the death camp and was killed, even though he had the opportunity to leave and survive. Yeah, during Soviet Union, so this is a representation of a menorah on the monument to all the dead in Treblinka. Himmler was the one who commanded that they remove all the bodies from the large pit and then burn them to destroy the evidence.
Bodies on this pyre, yes, which were just train tracks.
Train tracks above this, yeah.
Interesting to see that, but you can see it looks like a normal place, a normal environment. You can see the barracks, of course, wooden. Then you can see the zoo, which was done to relax, as you can see right here.
What kind of animals did they feature in there?
You mentioned a peacock?
Tak, there were 2 foxes, peacock, deer in the long run, and also they had horses. Horses were used by Kurs Frank to drive around the camp with in the long run. With the whip, yes, as you remember, because all the SS officers and Ukrainians, they were equipped with children.
An excavation.
This is where Lazaret
It was
was,
not done. No.
where they,
this is a
there's a
prominent
building with a
Israeli
white
name.
flag with red cross to fool the people, and then they killed all the disabled
His name was a Nobel Prize
people.
winner. So Chekanover also.
So this is the armory where, after the uprising of the inmates in August 43, they renovated it.
Was the pit for
Digging of the mass graves.
These photographs in the long run, they tells you exactly what happened right here.
So the pictures were taken by Kurt Franz, the deputy commandant of the death camp in Treblinka. They came from the album called Beautiful Times. The pictures above were taken from this place. It's very likely that an old gas chamber are visible under the digger's bucket. That's right over here. That's one of the gas chambers. This memorial in the train track was in memory of the, this one is Jan Maletka, murdered by the Germans for helping the Jews. So he was righteous among the nations. But then we see that right here is the little town of Treblinka. Any of the wooden houses existed during World War II.
Jews and gypsies were waiting for a transfer to the gas chambers in a nearby.
Oh, okay. You want to send them?
Yeah.
So this is the B'nai B'rith exhibit in Poland. And we're at the Polin Museum of Jewish History.
B'nai Lodge Polin in Poland. It's my great privilege and honor to welcome all of you at the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the existence of B'nai B'rith on Polish independent territory. As you all know, the organization was dissolved in 1938 together with Mason organizations and recreated in 2007. And I think that we have to... Where is Dan Mariashin, by the way? Where is Dan Mariashin, by the way?
Thank you very much, Andrzej. Ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, welcome to the Polin Museum of the History of Polish Jews. I would like to welcome especially my sisters and brothers from the Polish B'nai B'rith Lodge. We are honored,
those of you who are members of our lodge here, Andre leading the effort, that volunteers working in their communities, working in their countries, would do their best, as Andre pointed out, to bring about a better society, to bring about a better condition for the citizens in their community, Jewish and non-Jewish. And that tradition lives on. But as we'll find out, and I spoke with Dr. Pavla this morning briefly about the work that she and her team did. This is the panels outside. If you haven't seen them, you must see them. There are 10 panels with the history of B'nai B'rith, the history of Polish Jewry in contemporary times. It's very important to see because this is all about volunteers and all about what we've been able to accomplish in our countries and in our cities and in our communities. So again, I want to thank you for contemporary Polish Jewry. We need to do more, I think, to get the word out about exactly how the community today is comprised, what it does, and this is an excellent means to do that. So again, we wish you the very best for the conference. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Andrzej. I remember when we restarted B'nai B'rith here in Poland, I was kind of wondering, like, do we really need another Jewish organization? There's history, but there's so many, we already had enough Jewish organizations. And I see now, 13 years later, that B'nai B'rith here is playing an incredibly important role. And really, it's for people of my generation. B'nai B'rith today has given Jews of my generation here in Poland a home. You're still always very welcome in the synagogue. But what B'nai B'rith has succeeded in doing is giving us a home, a place to meet together for common cause, brothers and sisters, because we are Jewish and because we feel the obligation to help others because we are Jewish. And I want to say thank you.
For a year and a half. And one of the most heartwarming things that one can see here is a rebirth of Jewish community, Jewish life. After so many decades that this was hardly possible. And of course, since we're celebrating centennial of B'nai B'rith in Poland, after a century, one might say, which was, well...
Very often, I'm asked, as a survivor, as a historian, was it my opinion? Was it up to my opinion? People learn from the experiences of the Holocaust.
85. In Chorzów a little bit later in 1903. But I would like to focus on one particular part of Poland, which is Galicia. It's not by coincidence. I'm also somehow related to Galicia Jewish Museum and the history of Galician Jews. It's somehow dear to me, so I would like to mention the Galician connection of B'nai B'rith and the lodges that were established in 3 cities identified as Galician cities, although one of them is on the verge, on the edge of the Galician border. So the first lodge was established in Bielsko in 1889, the second in Krakow in 1892, and the third one in Lviv in 1899. I focus here examples. One is the Institute of Judaic Studies, Instytut Nauk Judaistycznych in Warsaw, established in 1928, with the whole group of well-established, renowned professors who supported it.
Thank you very much. Before we go for the coffee break, I would like to invite you
Monument dedicated to the heroes of the ghetto. Officially, it was done 3 years after the war on the 5th anniversary of the Jewish ghetto uprising, so 19th of April 1948 it was done, designed by Nathan Bapaport, the Jewish sculptor who was specializing especially in the features of the people. So you can see the people getting out of the fire during the uprising. You can see them standing straight, very proud of what they are doing, looking forward to the fight, and not necessarily to freedom. The Jewish ghetto uprising as such, it started on 19th of April 1943 and it lasted till 16th of May 1943, which might be considered to be an extremely long or a short period of time. Depends how you look at it. I would consider extremely long for all the circumstances. First of all, the ghetto uprising, when it started, was the first uprising, was the first monument to be done from Polish Jews to Jewish people. Is dedicated to all the fighters of the Jewish ghetto uprising as well as all the people who lost their lives during the Second World War here in James Bond. Because first of all, John Karski was born and raised in Łódź. He was growing up in the Jewish environment because the area he was staying, the block of flats he was staying in, was in majority Jewish. So it appeared, by the way, when he was in the grammar school that he was speaking Yiddish fluently, which was a great surprise for the family. But you know how it is with children. Yes, they play along. They cannot see the colors of the skin. They cannot see religion. So they were playing together. But as the war started, he became to be, of course, a Polish soldier. He was captured by. He was an officer, by the way, and he was captured by Russians. But he pretended that he's a now the monument we'll get to in a second, okay? But the Umschlagplatz was a place where people were gathered before they were sent to mostly Treblinka death camp, as I've mentioned before. It was just in the middle of a street, just in front of us, as you can see. This building on the left-hand side of ours, this was, now it's a high school youth center, but this used to be a Jewish hospital. Because within the Jewish ghetto, you had everything. You had, of course, shops, but you had a Jewish police, you had hospitals.
Well, that's the original building where the Nazis' headquarters were, and we're on the side of the street where the Jewish hospital was. Umschlagplatz. This is the monument to the Umschlagplatz, where they gathered all the Jews to go to Treblinka.
Ladies and gentlemen, monument dedicated to Umschlagplatz. You can see right here. First of all, it's supposed to resemble the open carriage in which people were taken mostly to Treblinka death camp. There's a death camp. Nazi Germans, they decided that registering people would be a waste of, as they said, two things: time and patience.
So this is a monument to the...
Ladies and gentlemen, Mila 18, Mila 18, the bunker in which the fighters, the leaders of the Jewish ghetto uprising, committed honorable suicide or were murdered by the Nazi Germans. When we think about bunker, we think about this concrete construction, the super small windows to shoot from. But bunker at that time was just a basement. There was a building here before the Second World War. One of the first days of the Second World War, this building was bombed, so there were ruins. But the basements, they survived, and it was kind of arranged by the smugglers into kind of a hideout, kind of a place where they could gather the things that were smuggled out, they were smuggling, or they committed honorable suicide.
So this is the memorial to Mila 18.
This is the place where the works are in progress, in which we are excavating the first...
So in that large tent, we're hearing Hatikva and services while we're here at the monument for Mila 18, the address where the Jewish resistance fighters in Warsaw eventually took their own lives and are all buried here because the Nazis destroyed all the bunkers and the homes, so the bodies are underneath. This is inside the tent where the archaeological digging is going on, and this is the actual bricks, the actual remains from the Warsaw Ghetto after the Nazis destroyed it during the Warsaw Uprising.
Yeah, probably they were trying to get rid of the sign. It lasted 2 months, and it's the rest part of the bunker that from 100 to 150 Jewish fighters during the uprising committed suicide. the buildings were touching each other. So this is Muranowska 39 and 41, which were touching Miła 18, that the suicide was committed at. The most interesting room was the one that is quite badly visible, that was in here. That was probably a praying room, still living. Probably approximately 50,000 Jews were still living in Warsaw in times of uprising. And from
This shows that they had running water and a toilet in the bunkers. These were items found in the excavations. This is the wall around the Jewish cemetery in Warsaw. It is also one of the walls of the Jewish ghetto.
Warrior plugs all over the city of Warsaw, connected to the Jewish heritage, and in this case, the Jewish ghetto. So you can see it was done in the early 2000s, so some time ago already. And all over the Jewish ghetto, you have this commemoration plugs with the map of the ghetto with it in Polish and in English, which I would consider is a very important thing because people, they can walk all over the city of Warsaw and they can see the heritage. Also, you have very often on the sidewalk kind of a metal engravery with the Murgetta, the wall of the ghetto in the pavement, in the sidewalk, which indicates the boundaries of the ghetto, which I would say is a very important thing.
This is the actual entrance to the ghetto.
Please, because I've noticed that.
But I do know someone.
Yes. The most.
So this is a larger monument showing the people who were wealthy. The Oneg Shabbat group, they created the underground archives, which we saw in the museum. And this is a monument to them.
And by the way, this is a very big complex of cemeteries, because the Jewish cemetery, of course, right here. On the other side of the Jewish cemetery, you have Tatar, Evangelic, Muslim, as well as two big Roman Catholic cemeteries. So it's a very big complex. You can see all the other people behind him, of course. But then you can see Vistula River, city of Warsaw, his house, other buildings of his.
So this is the Warsaw Ghetto. It was a big hole where we are now, and they decided to commemorate all the mass grave people that are buried here.
People had no money whatsoever. So at a certain time, a special unit was created, which
Represents the people being burned on the pyres.
The monument was done recently, but
The gravestones are in the forest and it's neglected.
if you say so. If it rains, yes.
So this is another remaining portion of the ghetto
This
wall.
is kind of out of the way of things, so there's no vandalism here at any time.
This is the Soviet-style Stalin building.
Here he was decorated by President Kwasniewski at that time, and another city editor. Okay.
So
like the butterflies.
That's our kindergarten.
Okay.
And then we can go up and see.
So we're in the school now, which is out for summer.
$450 a month.
And what's the enrollment? How many children?
We have kindergarten, elementary school, and high school. So from K to 8 to 12, it's 260.
Dawid, żółwik.
Dawid, przywitaj się.
Żółwik.
Nie przeszkadzamy wam w prezentach, tak? Oglądajcie.
Which is, they're still a little shocked because, it only ended like 3 days ago, so they're still.
We just
In Poland, I started working in a Ukrainian school, like a teacher. We did it Beit Hana in Dnipropetrovsk. I always in Chabad, in communities, and it was easy for me to come to school and start again from my minus, start for 0 and then up. And then I come to Pushka. I came to Pushka and...
Very popular name.
Together. And you?
My name is Katya. I'm here in Warsaw with 3 kids. And my husband also.
And the dog or the cat?
And with 2 cats.
Dog and cat.
Yes. Dogs with my 2 cats.
I'm here from middle of March, like Katya. And my way to Poland was a little bit unusual. I'm going by car with my friends, and then my friends decided not to go. And I'm just middle of nowhere. Yeah, and I started only hitchhiking to Lviv. Yeah, with kids. And
how many kids?
1 kid. I have 1 daughter and big luggage.
What is her name?
Sonia.
Sonia, and how old is she?
7.5. And it was a strange journey because I had a car with 2 kids inside, and they took me to Lviv, and then they find me where I can stay for 1 night. And then they took me to the border line between the Ukrainian and Poland. And I have 1 friend, Jana, she lived in Poland more than 10 years. And she helped me, she go to this place border and took me to their home.
So in this Jewish museum, they're showing the history of the Jews in Poland for the last 1,000 years.
The same construction techniques and the same materials, and this was actually meticulously recorded by a bunch of people before World War II. It was destroyed during World War II.
So it's a 17th century synagogue?
18th century.
Oh, 18.
Yeah, 1700s.
I see. This is inside the synagogue recreation. It was burned down and destroyed during World War II.
This is about the Baal Shem Tov, the Vilna Gaon, so we sort of have Hasidism versus the Mitnagdim, and then over there we have something about the Frankist movement.
historii trzeciego komunnego roku. Określenie arenarz, dzierżawca, stało się równoznaczne ze słowem ziemi.
Synem karczmarza w małej wiosce niedaleko Miru. Imię Maimon. Przybrał po lekturze pracy Maimonidesa, którego podziwiał. Filozof zachodni, komentatorem wyjechał do Berlina około 1779 roku. Kiedy nie wrócił do Rzeczypospolitej. Wrócił do Polski i połajowie, korzystając ze zbawienia swojego patrona, Adama Kazimierza Czartoryskiego, popularyzatora polskiego oświecenia.
Habsburg Empire, Prussia, the Russian Empire, Catherine the Great, Frederick II, Frederick Wilhelm II,
Z niego wypływają 4 rzeki. Jedna to święty Renę z Lublina, druga to święty Renę z Kozienic, trzecia to święty Renę z Krakowa, czwarta
gorsze inżynierzy. Zarabiał dużo mniej mężczyzn i dlatego gdy skończył swoją pracę, musiał przez 14,5 godziny z 2-godzinną przerwą na posiłek. Otrzymywały płace poniżej 1/3 płacy mężczyzny. Dzieci do pracy w warsztacie przyuczano bardzo wcześnie.
This is Abraham Yaakov trading with the Muslims.
Wrzuca je do morza, żeby oszczędzić sobie wydatków.
Is the Duke medieval capital.
Jeśli chrześcijanie
This is 10th to 12th century.
zarządzamy, aby był surowo ukarany według
The
zwyczaju
Duke had to consent to the Jews settling in their neighborhood.
przeszło do naszego skarbca.
This Bolesław the Pious, he allowed the Jews to live in Poland. These are the Cossacks. This one is Agudat Israel Party. Hello, hello. That horse was staring at me. So the bugler coming from this, which is the highest tower, and we're in Krakow, otherwise known as Krakow, and we're walking around the old town. What's the name of this square?
This is the Basilica of Our Lady, the main parish church of Krakow.
So it's the Basilica of Their Lady. And that's where the bugler was?
Yep, the highest tower. He shows up every hour, on the hour, flying to the four corners of the world.
Wow. These are the buildings for the commandant and the stables from June of 1940.
The place became a reflection of the German policy for occupied Poland, killed the leader and enslaved the rest. In total, in the concentration, they registered 400,000 people.
So this is the electrified fence, 100,000 volts, stolen from the Polish cup factory.
You know, when Edita and I came here, it was just for the tour, like the hotel or something. I don't remember.
Right. This is a tunnel bomb shelter for the Germans. This is block 24 for the artists.
Ground level and basement was so-called Lager Museum, and they were first images that were painters, sculptors, to make arts for the most prominent Nazis inside Auschwitz. However, also for those that were visiting the place. So when the Himmler came, he could get his own sculpture, his own paintings, to have the critics to eat and kill another. And as I came here, and because of my musician friend, jazz composer, and one other musician, we go through the notes. They did such a good reputation. They were sending in place for it, and they used to be a huge group of people, many often I found one of the most mysterious.
This is where they would hang the people from this mass hanging. Going into block 6 now.
But then the wooden shoes and all the
wooden shoes.
They were easily stained. Wooden shoes, art physical one, we fall, so they want to do this again. That's this organization now. Which is judging president. But on the other hand, it's also striving to which kids are killed by Polish tornadoes or killed by Polish soldiers when Poland is occupied. He's in America. So in here, Poland are shot at the will be in the country. Not allowed to reach their border. People was they were found guilty on the 3rd of the month of visit the country, the first Africa, to the hardest part of the world, the stuff of those words. Hard and short words with no defender. Both these people say a word. The staff officer was prosecutor, the staff officer was the judge, the staff officer was the scribe. Laws of death finish after the war. But that remains interesting. I'm not much into such a
This is where the Nazis shot everyone at the back of the head. So these windows were covered so the people upstairs couldn't see the shooting and the killing. These are the cells downstairs where they would, that's the small air, that's where the air would get in so that people would suffocate to death. So these have 4 million names of the Jews that were killed here in Auschwitz, and in Yad Vashem they have 5 million names already. This is the map with all the deportation spots where the people came from to get to Auschwitz. They wanted to kill all the European Jewish people. And they were sent in the cattle cars. From Saloniki, it could take 6 days, and they died on the cattle cars. This is where Rudolf Hess was hanged after the war. They're walking into the gas chamber.
A bomb shelter here. They hide themselves exactly in the same room when they were killing Jewish people from late for one.
We are walking into one of the gas chambers. This is where the Zyklon B went in. So then they go into the crematorium. They were burned, they were killed, and now they're burned in this area. So now we're inside Berkinau. We walked in through the gates. The trains came here and then unloaded all the victims here. This is a train, model train. This is the tower. We're now in the watchtower.
You see a lot of images around. These people are totally destroyed. And to get the bricks needed to build the first sector. And then we build after the war, taking materials from this sector. Let's show you guys pretty well how huge Birkenau was. 3 sectors, 300 buildings, 6 gas chambers, 90,000 people in one moment in a concentration camp. And most of the people that were murdered in gas chambers were murdered in those 6 chambers. Too much attention to politician words and not enough attention to what the words bring with disability. Because they're paying the highest price. That's one of the Scots showing this pretty history. Help me. So possibly, there's no paper first, possibly there was some silent deal that they're able to take wherever it was in the morning, but to leave the brick buildings alone.
Well, I guess they don't have.
But you need to count if it was a third sector, also included, I mean, this struggle, well, it's taking from this brick. Most of Nazis jump out. So thousands of Jews secured by small groups, they just couldn't afford opening for security and to keep the secret. And you find me a bit struggling with those crowds to give you at least shirtless.
These are remnants of the factories. They were all different factories and Jewish slave labor. The factories were destroyed. This is in Berkinau.
7.
This is the monument.
During the communism era. There is no description.
This is where the steps they entered.
Then they need to turn right, and the second basement, that was the chamber. After killing, they were using elevators.
This
the
is
rest of boats to get out.
This is the crematorium.
You will find the black place is the ground where they were going.
This is the gas. These are the incinerators of the crematorium 2. And these are the gas chambers from crematory 2. The Germans blew them up right after the Soviets came in, and that's what we just saw. Crematorium.
Ashes lie. Is that the concept here?
So when I was here, it was just water, so I guess because it's...
So this is where the ashes from all the murdered people were thrown.
90 days already shaking.
Wow.
Oh.
So, and the proper restoring to not lose the UNESCO, it's taking time.
So the wooden
The
roof
tent, the first one,
is
I started
deteriorating.
7 years ago. It was here, it's still here.
Oh, that's
The
a barrack
building-
in there? I thought they
Yeah.
brought things in there.
Banks. I should say 444 Nazi painters. So 12 on one bank, 60 banks, about 700 women in each. Reality, the bricks were only for those that simply couldn't stand under it. If you were too weak, then jumping on fences fast, pretending to escape Nazi shot you from Watchtower, fast and not entirely suicide.
And
This
when you
is the
take a
heart
look
of the Jewish
in the direction,
quarter.
the end of the square with this magnificent attic, the building made out of bricks. Synagogue in Poland from the 90s of 1400s. Alte Schule. There was the seat of the rabbis of Krakow. There was the seat of Vaad Arba Arotzot, the Parliament of Four Lands, the Jewish representation to the kings of Poland.
And now it's a museum.
During the war times, obviously everything was, the sacrifice was profanated, looted, plundered. The building was used as a warehouses. After the war was carefully restored and was offered by the Jewish congregation to the municipality of Krakow. Since then, the building is housing the exhibition, which was set up mainly
The synagogue is from the 1550s.
synagogue behind the cemetery.
Jan
I mean, you
Karski again.
deserve to take a bow.
Thou shalt not kill. 88 members murdered by the Nazis.
Renaissance synagogue.
So this is the inside of the synagogue. The second oldest. This is the one from the 1550s. And
This is where the Moses still has and where the holy position of the chief rabbi of Krakow. The synagogue was given for his father. His father was in family position for Poland. His sponsor in the synagogue. During the wartime, obviously looted, plundered. But on the territory of Poland, only particular tombstones might be slightly older than the whole cemetery here. Because the first burials, that's the very beginning of 1500s.
yeah, so this is the
And
oldest
the
Jewish
cemetery
cemetery in
remained
Poland.
open till 1800. This is
This
when
wall was destroyed by the Nazis,
Well, they did a
made the
nice
synagogue into a warehouse,
It's made up
and
of
the-
tombstones.
and this is made up of the tombstone parts that they found because
That
the
one in the
Nazis
middle.
made the ancient cemetery into garbage
Yeah, it
dump.
looks like the oldest of all.
Really, you can't read anything. So what,
Again, the oldest cemetery in
number of rabbis
Krakow, or in Poland, all of Poland. And these little roofs was because the gravestones are made out of limestone, and this to protect it from the elements. So this is the Jewish neighborhood with all the Jewish signs, but actually they're from before the war, how it looked. This is for the Jewish festival going on here in Krakow. So the old Jewish neighborhood was not destroyed during World War II. Of course, the Jews were all taken out, but the buildings are very fancy. It's from the Viennese architecture. Here we are at another synagogue.
preacher. The congregation was hiring a preacher in charge of the quality of preaching.
They talked about how their Royal Highnesses, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall on 29th of April 2008.
So now this is King Charles III who donated the money to build this Jewish community center.
That all changed quite literally overnight with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We had, not exaggerating, tens of thousands of refugees in the first month or two walking in to the JCC for anything and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Actually,
Still in the Jewish neighborhood.
That was the moment when he joined, mainly the other, I think at the moment.
1600, the synagogue.
In those days, he was the head of a Jewish congregation in the back of another synagogue from 1600. There was a so-called the Hoiche Shul, the high synagogue. The reason why it was high, the congregation, they made a decision to put the prayer room to the first floor.
So all the racket they're setting up for the Jewish festival, it's annual, it's set up by non-Jews to attract the Jews back to Poland. This is one of the houses here is where Helena Rubinstein lived, the Rubinstein family. She was born on the other side of the river. Then has all the menorahs.
Jewish congregation of Krakow, which was placed here by the owners, the former owners of the house here, the restaurant, Nissenbaum family.
Did they get their house back?
I'm not sure. Nowadays, this is used by the kosher